Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
TV stations would actually sign off air at 2 a.m. So after 2 a.m., there would be nothing. Your TV would go blank. It would just be snow on your TV. And I'll be honest, and I think I mentioned this once before, but that used to scare me. Like I was never up at 2 a.m., but if you were ever up or you ever saw TV signing off, it was really weird because the thing that they would do was 2 a.m. would hit and they would play like the national anthem or America the Beautiful, one of those national songs. And then your screen would just go dark or your screen would just be fuzzy. And it would literally be like that until 6 a.m. the next day. So for 4 hours between 2 a.m. and maybe 6 a.m. or maybe sometimes 2 a.m. depending on the channel, between 2 a.m. and 7 a.m., there was no TV programming on. And it stayed like that until Cable News Network, aka CNN, hit the scene. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I want to thank you all for tuning in as you do each and every week. Shout out to those of you who are watching on YouTube as well as Spotify. Man, check this out. I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time. Watching TV for me ain't the same anymore. It has drastically changed for me. I don't know, and I'm very interested to hear your feedback as to how you watch TV, how it's consumed, where do you watch TV? Who do you watch TV with? But for me, I don't watch TV the same. And it's crazy because, and I'm going to talk about it in this episode, there's a lot of things, a lot of different ways that I can watch TV. TV, in essence, is always with me. Like I can watch TV on my phone. I can watch TV on my Mac, or I can watch it on an iPad, or I can watch it on TV. But I don't watch TV the same. As many of you know, maybe you don't know, I'm a child of the 70s, reared in the 80s and the 90s. TV was different back then. It goes without saying because we didn't have the technology and everything that came with it. But I will say this much, it was different because where we watch TV, when we watch TV, and with whom we watch TV with was always important. As a child, I always watched TV with my family. I can't ever recall just watching TV by myself. Even when I got a TV in my room, I was usually watching TV with my brother, who's 3 years younger than me. So, but just watching TV by myself alone, no, that didn't happen. If it did, you probably could count them on one hand. And when my parents were together, we all watched TV as a family, or at the very least, I watched TV with my mom or with my dad. But it was never a situation where I was watching TV by myself. But TV was very important in our house. I remember years where we had the big floor model TV. And then we had years where kind of like the cover art, the big floor model TV might go out and then you got to put a little TV on top of the big floor model TV. And then, obviously the dimensions and things had changed for TV. I remember my first TV, my own personal TV, was a black and white TV. And, we used that to play our video games on sometimes. But yeah, it was different how we viewed TV. It was always something special, but it was very important to watch TV because if you weren't watching TV, you were outside. And what was happening outside? Everything, because everybody was outside. But when you weren't outside, you were watching TV. And I mean, I remember watching some of my favorite game shows like The Price is Right, particularly if I was home from school. The Price is Right, Press Your Luck, obviously Wheel of Fortune. As I got a little older into the 80s, Jeopardy was a big one that I would watch with my mom and my dad, specifically with my dad. And I was always amazed at how he got so many answers right. And it's funny because that's a tradition that we have now with my wife and my kids. We'll sit and watch Jeopardy at the dinner table. And, we're all in competition to see who can get as many right as we can. And so that's always interesting. But from that to my favorite sitcoms, I watched a little bit of everything in the 80s, from obviously shows like The Cosby Show, A Different World, to even a little bit back further than that, The Jeffersons, Good Times, Different Strokes. Shout out to Charlene Dupree. The Facts of Life. Who's the Boss? The Wonder Years. I don't listen. I could name Alice. I could name if it was out back then. I probably watched it. Right. And so like that was very important. And then obviously Saturday morning cartoons. I did a guest episode where I talked about my experiences watching Saturday morning cartoons. Me and my brother Damon would come out. We'd get up early, 7 o'clock in the morning, get our bowl of cereal, sit on the floor. Well, I would lay on the floor. I lay on my stomach, eat my cereal, and we watch, the likes of the Super Friends. He liked the Smurfs. I hated the Smurfs. That's another story for another day. So like the Super Friends, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, just to name a few. I could go on. And then we'd watch Soul Train. And by the time Soul Train went off, it was time to go outside. TV was a staple. And then something changed. In 1982, that was the year that I turned 10 years old because I was born in 72. Something changed. The advent of cable TV. So cable TV changed the game. And it was crazy because like, I remember we had this big cable box, and on the cable box, you had to, when you wanted to change a channel, there was no remote control. You had to literally walk to the TV and press a button to change the channel on the cable box. It was annoying, but we were so happy to have more than 4 channels because prior to cable, we only had 4 channels. I think it was ABC, NBC, CBS, and PBS. That was it. So if whatever you were watching didn't come on those channels, I mean, pretty much everything came on those channels, but the game changed when you were watching those things. But again, cable TV changed my life because one of the major programs that I would watch every single day was something called Music Television or MTV. And on Music Television or MTV, this is where they would show videos. And that was a new concept because someone like me who loved music, this was my first time seeing videos go with the songs that I would listen to. Now, I'll be honest, 82, there wasn't a lot of the music that I listened to on, like you wasn't going to see SOS Band on MTV. You wasn't going to see The Time on MTV. Hell, the only people that I listened to that you would see on MTV was Prince and Michael Jackson for a little while. One of the artists that I liked back in the early 80s was a guy from Buffalo, New York by the name of Rick James. That's right, Rick James, bitch. Shout out to the Chappelle Show. But Rick James couldn't get played on MTV, and he wasn't happy about it. Subsequently, a couple of years later, there was a TV station out of Washington, D.C. that came about on cable TV, and it changed the game for me as well. And it was called Black Entertainment Television, a.k.a. BET. Once we got BET, man, it was over. It was over. I loved watching BET, loved watching the videos, loved watching the programming. Shout out, rest in peace to Ananda Lewis, Teen Summit, everything. And like I said, Saturday mornings were meant for cartoons. Saturday nights, my mom would let me stay up for a little while to watch Saturday Night Live. Eddie Murphy was on back then. And here's a funny thing that a lot of you who are probably younger don't remember. But if you're my age or from that era, you remember. TV stations would actually sign off air at 2 a.m. So after 2 a.m., there would be nothing. Your TV would go blank. It would just be snow on your TV. And I'll be honest, and I think I mentioned this once before, but that used to scare me. Like I was never up at 2 a.m., but if you were ever up or you ever saw TV signing off, it was really weird because the thing that they would do was 2 a.m. would hit and they would play like the national anthem or America the Beautiful, one of those national songs. And then your screen would just go dark or your screen would just be fuzzy. And it would literally be like that until 6 a.m. the next day. So for 4 hours between 2 a.m. and maybe 6 a.m. or maybe sometimes 2 a.m. depending on the channel, between 2 a.m. and 7 a.m., there was no TV programming on. And it stayed like that until Cable News Network, aka CNN, hit the scene. I want to say that was probably like in the early to mid 80s as well. So once we got CNN, that was the only channel that was, and that's what they ran on. They ran on the idea and the concept that their network was going to be on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So even if ABC went off, CBS went off, NBC went off, all of your other cable stations went off, you could always go to CNN and turn it on. And so, like I said, I watched all of that growing up, and, it molded my childhood because you always wanted to see something on TV because the cool part about it is once you saw something on TV, your friends are probably automatically saw it as well. And it would be the topic of conversation the next day, and I remember like we talked about this before my homie Eclectic podcast. Shout out to Eclectic too, by the way. Eclectic's got a really, really dope new podcast called Before Everything Changed. Check that out. You can find that wherever you get podcast. And we talked about it on his podcast once, but like I remember distinctly when we watched the Motown 25 celebration. And that was famously the night where Michael Jackson, for the first time for a lot of people, saw him do the moonwalk, the world famous moonwalk. Now, there's some discussion about whether or not Mike created the moonwalk. I'm not going to get into that, but that was the first time we saw Mike do the moonwalk. He was performing Billie Jean. And so that was the topic of conversation the next day at school, at my elementary school in Florence, South Carolina, where I grew up. What was interesting was there was one kid in our class, this kid named Billy. Billy did not, Billy's mom made him go to bed. So he never saw Michael Jackson moonwalk across the stage. The sad part about it was Billy was a Michael Jackson fan. I don't know why his mom made him go to bed because Michael Jackson, if I'm not mistaken, came on toward the end of the show when the show probably, I think, went off around 11. But they had been teasing Mike's performance throughout the night. Coming up, Michael Jackson performs. Coming up, Michael Jackson performs. And so I think Mike, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. It's 40 years. Sue me. I think Mike was the last to perform, or he performed somewhere toward the end. But anyway, long story short, Billy's mom made him go to bed before Mike came on. And subsequently, he never saw Mike moonwalk. And so, when we came to school the next day, we were talking about Michael Jackson. And I don't even think we called it moonwalking. I don't know what we called it, but we were talking about Michael Jackson's performance, and he didn't know what the hell we were talking about. And it was sad, but funny. And that was like how TV affected my childhood. You move forward to my adolescence, and then when I got to college at South Carolina State University, TV was more appointment TV. And I'll be honest, my time at South Carolina State was from 1991, 1996. I probably watched less TV during that time frame, and it's only because I was outside. Like, we were outside, you know what I'm saying? So you didn't have time, but when I did watch TV, it was appointment TV. So shows like A Different World or Martin, you were there for that. Like I loved a show like The Golden Girls. I was there for that. But, on a random Wednesday night, I can't tell you what I was watching because I might be outside, I might be downstairs in the lobby in the dorm, or I might be over at Bradham and Manning Hall, trying to holler at some girls. There was too much stuff going on our campus. There was always something going on our campus. Quite honestly, I was having too much fun in college to really be in front of a TV. I watched a lot of TV, but by the time I got to college in 1991, there were VCRs. And so, if you missed something, you could record it. Now, it wasn't like later on with technology change. So if you recorded something, so if I wanted to record Martin, I could. But I had to make sure that my channel was on Fox or whatever station Martin was on. And so I could record Martin, or I could record in living color. And I did. And we would come back and watch the VCR tapes later. And that was good because that way, if you weren't in front of a TV, you didn't miss anything. Because here's the thing, folks. If there was an episode of A Different World, which was one of my favorite TV shows ever, if there was ever an episode that you missed, you wouldn't see it again until the following summer when they ran the reruns. And who's in the house on at 8:30 on a Thursday night in the summertime? Not me. I'm outside. So yeah, we did it like that. I did more recording, and I had a lot of VHS tapes where we watched on our VCRs. And so that was cool, but it did change how I watch TV. And now it's time for a quick commercial break. On the other side of the break, I'll tell you how my TV viewership changed. Sit tight. We'll be back in just a second. We are back. Once again, it's your boy 12 Kyle. This is the 12 Kyle podcast, and we're talking about how TV changed for me. Before the break, I mentioned about how I watched TV as a child, and then I mentioned about how I watched TV as a young adolescent. Now, once I became an adult, the way that I consumed TV, also because of technology, was totally different from my childhood and my adolescence. Watching TV changed for me drastically as an adult. By the time I became an adult, I eventually would become a father, husband. I was working. And so, you're probably not spending as much time in front of the TV, even though you have quite a bit of time. But, particularly when our kids were young, you end up watching kid programs. I might watch Blues Clues because Dion wants to watch Blues Clues. Or I might watch, I might go watch Cars instead of, I might pop the VCR in and watch the movie Cars as opposed to watching something, a special on TV. And you just did that just because, you wanted to make sure that your kids were watching something because you didn't want your kids watching the stuff you were watching, right? And so a lot of times some of the stuff was more family oriented. I still got a chance to see the shows that I liked and loved. I just did it at my own pace. And then again, technology changed things and also social media. We'd be far remiss if we didn't mention the role that social media played in how we viewed TV. I'll be honest, there was a point in time on Twitter where we would watch TV as, I guess, the people that I followed and the people that followed me, we would watch it as a community. Remember Scandal, the TV show Scandal? Oh my God. We would be on Twitter tweeting away about everything that was happening in the episode. And it kind of sucked for some people because if you didn't, I mean, I live in Atlanta, so I'm on the East Coast, but if you lived in LA, you might want to not see the tweets because it would then spoil it for you because it's not on at the same time. It's coming on 3 hours later. But Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, shows like that, we would just kind of what we call tweet through them. It was must-see TV. I loved, even though I didn't particularly care for the music a lot of times, but I loved, we would watch on social media together as a community the BET Awards, and we would tweet about who was performing, and it was a dope time. What a time to be alive. It was really, because at that particular time, your Twitter timeline was people, for the most part, that you knew. At least for me, I knew them, or we've been following each other for a while. So it made sense. And we would just offer our opinions, commentary, all of that stuff. And who could forget one of my favorite shows of all time, Insecure. Listen, viewing Insecure live on Sundays was like, and then tweeting through it was like the Civil War. You'd have women on this side, you'd have men on this side. And the Lawrence Hive was alive and active. One of my favorite memories of, the experience of watching Insecure live and commenting through it was when Lawrence and Issa broke up and Lawrence smashed old girl. Listen, man, there's ways that you can go back and check those tweets, but if you went down the timeline, boy, it was some hurt people that night. I mean, like, I guess a lot of the ladies kind of saw themselves like Issa, so it was a great time. But we used to tweet through stuff like that, and so it changed how, you liked it, and shows like Game of Thrones and The Wire. Listen, The Wire was, something else we would tweet about and tweet through, and it was great. But, I also understand too that when you put that type of stuff on social media, you're kind of spoiling it for somebody who is not in your time zone or who may not have seen it. So you had to see it when it came out. It was like, there was no such thing as, okay, well, we're not going to talk about this today. No, we're going to talk about it right now. And so a little bit further along in history, you waited and you tried to wait and having discussions on social media amongst your peers about something that you saw or something that you liked or didn't like in a particular episode, because you wanted to give people the opportunity to see what happened. We used to do that in my group chat all the time. Like, okay, who saw it last night? And there would always be 2 or 3 guys. Hey, I haven't seen it, but I'm going to watch it tonight. Okay, you got until Wednesday. After Wednesday, we talking about it. So it was group watching of TV, and that coincided with the group dynamic of your social media timeline. I was really, really in tune with my social media timeline, with my Twitter timeline, with my, Facebook timeline. As time moved on, those things became less and less important. And quite frankly, a lot of weirdos showed up and made social media what it is today, a weird space. So that fast forwards to me now. How do I watch TV now? How I watch TV now is totally different from how I watched it as a child, how I watched it as an adolescent, how I watched it as a younger adult. Now I have access to way more TV than I've ever had in my life, and I watch very little TV. And it's not because the stuff on TV isn't good. There's a lot of great things on TV. And I'm not going to tell you that I don't have the time, what appeals to me is the stuff that's on TV. I get to it, but there's no rush to watch it. I guess the best way that I can describe it is that TV for me right now is a buffet. You know how you go into a buffet, shout out Golden Corral. You go into a buffet and you got food over, you got so much, you got potatoes, rice, corn, chicken, grapes, hamburger, hot dogs. You got all of this stuff together and you really don't know which one to pick. That's where I am with CB. And that's where, if I'm being honest, it's probably where I've been for the better part of the last 6 or 7 years. I had cable for a long time. And about 4 years ago, I cut the cord as far as cable was concerned, because between the NFL Sunday Ticket and my regular cable bill, I was paying over $300 a month, right? So I found a streaming service I'm not going to name. Found a streaming service that, it's a Fire Stick, basically, programming that where I have access to over 9,000 channels. I have access to over 50,000 movies, both past and present. Sometimes movies that are currently in the theaters. Well, they have to be in theaters for at least a month. And then normally after a month, they'll pop up. But I could watch any document, any type of series from the past or the present. And like I said, close to 10,000 channels. And I paid $40 a month for it. And even having all of that access, I don't watch TV like that. I just don't. I get to it when I can. Or, it's the idea of the buffet. It's a lot of food, but I'm just going to go over here and get some corn. I'm going to go over here and get a biscuit. I'm going to get a little bit of corn, a biscuit, and a piece of chicken, and I'm going to sit down and eat. And that's it. I'm not interested in getting a big thing of mashed potatoes, a big thing of collard greens, a big thing of string beans, a big thing of pork and beans, a big thing of hot dog, and putting it all on my plate. I'm not doing that. I just don't. I'll be honest. I watch more sports than I watch anything else. And for me, that's my reality TV. For me, that's the unpredictability of sports is what I watch. Particularly now at the time of this recording, football season is winding down. The NFL is wrapping up. The college football playoff is almost over. And so we're new into 2026. And once the NFL season ends, that's normally when I kind of dive into, the shows or what have you. But I still watch the NBA. I don't watch a lot of, particularly, at least up until this point. I mean, my favorite team is the Atlanta Hawks. I live here in Atlanta, so that's who I watch. But if the Hawks aren't playing, I might turn to see what LeBron or Steph Curry is doing. But I have, in this TV package, I have access to all of the basketball games. So I have access on Sunday afternoons. I have access to all of the football games. On Saturday afternoons, I have access to all of the college football games. Honestly, on Saturdays, I'm watching my South Carolina State University Bulldogs, who just won the Black College National Championship. Shout out to us. So yeah, but I'm normally watching sports. Baseball is going to be here soon, probably sooner than you know it. I'm a Yankees fan. I'll tap in for the Yankees most days. Now, the Yankees are a little bit different because they play 162 games. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I watch every single game. But I'll peek in every now and then through the first month or so of the season. And then probably once the All-Star break comes, and I'm watching pretty constantly because there's not much on TV during the summertime as far as sports is concerned. And that's another time where I kind of catch up on stuff. But because I don't have that desire to talk to people or to find out about what's the hot thing or what's out or what have you, I don't really watch. Or I'm not gonna say I don't watch it. I take my time and I'll say I'll get to it because that's the equivalent of me. Oh, they got some grilled chicken up there. Okay, I'll come back and get some grilled chicken. I mean, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Like the Puff Daddy documentary is and has been out for a couple of months. I haven't seen it. I plan to see it, but it's there. I'll get to it. I know there's been a long discussion and conversation and talked about on the Breakfast Club and all of these other places, the posts, the blogs, the gossip columns, all of this stuff. I mean, I haven't seen the doc. I heard it's pretty good, but the thing I always say about documentaries, particularly if I'm familiar with the story, what am I going to learn that I don't already know? That's my main question. If I can learn more about you or a particular subject in a documentary that I didn't know before I press play, then that's what I'm all for. But I'm not into watching documentaries where I watch it and it just reaffirms everything that I already knew. That's a waste of time for me. I'm not going to tell you that I don't have time to watch TV because I do. I just don't. I mean, I work from home and I'm probably one of the few people who work from home and I never turn my TV on during the day. Never. I don't know what comes on between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. I know a lot of people, my brother who works from home as well, they'll watch, First Take on ESPN. I'm not into hearing the talking heads talk about sports because it's annoying. It is really and truly annoying to me. But yeah, I just don't. So I'm entering the time where I can dive into the TV stuff, the stuff that I haven't seen, the stuff that everybody's been talking about that, man, you need to check that out. I actually have a list. I have a list, and the list is pretty long, and the list is strictly called things to watch. I'll share with you just a couple of things that are on this list. The Vince Staples Show. So I think I saw a couple of episodes from season 1. I know season 2 is out now. Black Twitter Doc, How to Die Alone, the Black Quarterback series, Succession. I'm going to watch Succession. I started it and I stopped it, I think, after season 1, but I'm going to go back to season 1 and start over and watch Succession. I think Succession would be because it's an hour long, it would be something great for me to watch when I ride the bike at the gym for an hour because I want to be on the bike for an hour. Succession will be something that I could watch. Severance. I saw the first episode. It looked really, really weird. I think if I can get through the first episode, I'm going to go back to that. Godfather of Harlem. I've heard great stories about it. I don't know what season it is in. It's on the list. Am I going to go watch it? I don't know. Ladies First on Netflix. The Choice is Yours on Paramount. Dear Mama, the Tupac doc. Ted Lasso. I saw the first 2 seasons of Ted Lasso. Incredibly funny. I got to go back. I don't know what season they're in. The Morning Show. A Showtime Lakers show. Sweet Life. United Shades of America. Blackberry. The Money Game. 1992. The Allen Iverson documentary, the Eddie Murphy. Well, no, I did see the Eddie Murphy documentary. And it's interesting because Sharice and I watched the Eddie Murphy documentary literally in the hotel. And I think if we had not been in a hotel, just getting up one morning, I probably would have said, oh, yeah, I'm going to get to it. But I did see it. I saw it the week that it came out. It's one of the few things that I've seen on time, if you will. Rick James documentaries, Spike Lee 9/11 documentaries. The list goes on and on. There's movies that I have on this list that I haven't seen that I need to see. And for everything, and that's just, I'm reading you just a few things this list is long. I don't think that I'm going to get to all of this. Like I'll use the Showtime documentary about the Los Angeles Lakers. I think that was 1 season. I'd probably watch that. But I mean, if you've got a show that you want me to see, that you would recommend that I would see, and it's 5 seasons, I'm probably and it's an hour episode each season. I mean, for each episode, I'm not watching it. Now, I loved Insecure because even though Insecure was 5 seasons, you could, it's only 30 minutes each episode, so you could knock it out. I'm not a binge watcher. Like, I know some of you listening and watching, y'all can sit and say, hey, we're going to watch this episode or we're going to watch this series for this weekend. We're going to get some popcorn. We're going to sit on the couch. We're going to watch this. I can't do it. I tried that with, what was the name of the joint we watched? It was a superhero Marvel guy. I can't remember which one it was, but I tried that. Just watching the same. I need a break. My mind needs to. It would be the equivalent of listening to somebody's podcast, the same podcast, for like a weekend. Like, even as dope as I think my podcasts are, you ain't supposed to listen to my pod. You're not supposed to binge my podcast and just listen to them back to back to back to back to back for a whole weekend. A day, cool. A weekend, no. Get up and do something. Get out, get something. So it's just different. I mean, how I consume TV is just totally different. It's changed. I'm cool with the change. It has just changed. Some of the things that's on this list, on this series, I'll be honest, I'm never going to get back to. I may as well take them off the list because I won't have the time. Because here's the thing: if football season or when football season ends, if I don't get to it by the start of next football season, guess what? It goes into another cycle. So I'm probably not going to get to it. So it's better that I have something set up regimented wise to where I can sit and look at it. Just like I said, Succession, each episode is an hour long. I go to the gym for an hour. I'm on the bike for an hour. That's perfect. I could do that. And that also would keep up with my workout. So I would, if there's, 5 seasons of Succession, and I'm just making it, I don't know how many seasons it is, but I could do that and be consumed. And here's the thing: if I'm on the bike at 7 o'clock in the morning ain't nobody calling me, ain't nobody texting me like that to where it's going to be interrupted. If I'm watching Succession at home at 9 o'clock, I might get a phone call from my mom or my homeboys, or my son might text me, or the group chat might be going crazy, and you get distracted. That's something where I can kind of lock in on. But like I said, TV, how I watch TV has changed. Sports has been the one consistent. Fun fact, I watch the NFL and I have the Sunday ticket. Fun fact, as many of you know, my uncle played for the New York Giants. His name is Harry Carson. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I rarely saw my uncle play each season. Like, we would go to games, but there was no NFL Sunday ticket for me to watch him weekly. Growing up in South Carolina, you didn't even know if you were going to watch a Giants game. They weren't going to necessarily broadcast the Giants unless they were playing against like the Cowboys or the then Redskins or somebody like that, because we weren't in the New York market. And even when we would watch Giants highlights, for the better part of his career, you'd catch something on the 6 o'clock news, or you'd see the highlights on Monday Night Football, but it's a 30-second clip. There was no cable to tap, even though ESPN eventually came in the early 80s, there were very few Giants highlights that I could see. And so, like, if I were watching him in 1976, I could, as of today's time, I could just turn on the Sunday ticket and just watch him play. But outside of the games that we saw, we would get updates, and you get a highlight here or there. You get a 20-second clip here, a 30-second clip there. But if they weren't playing in the playoffs or anything like that, and the Giants sucked, his first couple of years in the league, there was no guarantee that you were going to see him. So it changed. And even now, things have changed. So I get access with the Sunday ticket. I get access to every single football. I could put the game Sunday afternoons during the regular season. I can put it on the Red Zone channel, and the Red Zone channel will show you bits and pieces of every single game whenever they get in the red zone. And it's great for TV. It is great TV, particularly if the Giants aren't playing. That's what I'm doing. I'm watching the red zone. And so how we consume it is just totally different. I love the fact that I'm able to have access, but I don't take full advantage of the access that I have. And I'll be honest, I just don't. Without Red Zone, I wouldn't see a lot of stuff. But I am conscious of the fact that I have a great deal of access to a lot of TV programming, and it's just not there. Like, I'm just not there. In conclusion, the way that I've watched TV over the years, particularly in these last few years, has changed for better or for worse. I go back to the example of the buffet. While I can't and won't eat everything is available. Everything on TV is available. Everything on streaming is available. I have everything. I have access to watch whatever I want, whenever I want. And there's nothing that can stop me from watching a program and watching an entire series in a weekend or in a week or so. I just don't. And it's not as appealing, particularly if you don't have an audience of people that you're watching it with to talk about. Not that I need it, but it's just different. I'm not going to see everything on TV, nor do I want to. Some things I'm never going to get to, and I'm okay with that. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle Podcast. Be sure to like, download, share, and subscribe this podcast to all of your friends. Also, don't forget about our baby. It is my music podcast. It's called the Rap Soul Podcast. We drop weekly episodes there. And on the Rap Soul Podcast, we talk about music and artists from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s when it comes to rap, hip-hop, soul, and R&B. Simply put, folks, it's the best music podcast that you've never heard. So make sure that you check it out and share it with a friend. If you'd like to contribute to me and this podcast financially, hit us up on Cash App. $TWELVEKYLE. Also, we have merch. Click the link in the description box below. You can buy 12 Kyle Podcast t-shirts, hoodies, as well as coffee mugs. We got it for the low. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle Podcast. I will catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheers.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle Podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle Podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.